Imagine holding the master keys to your entire digital kingdom, all your sensitive data, customer info, your operational secrets. Now, what if I told you that most organizations right now have accidentally left hundreds, maybe even thousands of copies of those keys just lying around? Scattered about, just waiting for anyone to find and use them. It sounds, like something from a cyber thriller movie, but it's actually the daily reality of network and system security. And look, these aren't just abstract threats. They are active attack vectors. They're being used right now to unlock digital doors. In fact, just today, August 25th, 2025, CISA, that's the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, they added 3 new critical vulnerabilities to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. Think of that catalog as CISA's real-time danger zone for threats that are, well, actively being exploited out there. We're talking about really serious stuff. Things like deserialization and privilege management flaws in Citrix session recording. Those are CVE 2024-80069 and CVE 2024-80068. And also a significant GitLink following vulnerability, CVE 2025-483384. These are real, immediate dangers being used by bad actors literally today. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take complex topics, sometimes really complex ones, and break them down into essential, actionable insights just for you. Today, we're diving deep into the critical world of network and system security, and specifically for our BCIS 43,345 students at Tarleton State University's Dr. Ciampa College of Business. This deep dive is really custom tailored. It's designed to bridge that crucial gap between, the theory you learn in class and the real-world application you'll face out there. Our mission is to equip you with the knowledge and the skills to understand computer-related risks, master approaches for securing modern electronic data systems, and really thrive in this ever-evolving field of cybersecurity. Before we unlock these secrets, though, if you're finding value in these insights, and we really hope you are, please take a second, hit that like button, subscribe, and maybe share this deep dive with a colleague or a classmate who needs to stay ahead in cybersecurity. Don't miss out on these insider tips. They could genuinely protect your careers down the line. And just a reminder, all the resources we mentioned today, from the latest industry tools to those career-boosting certifications, they're all linked right down there in the description below for you.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? Vulnerability management. It's not just about finding flaws, like ticking boxes. It's really about building a truly resilient security posture, kind of like how a living organism adapts to its environment. Our mission today is to unpack this entire life cycle. We're going from the systematic identification and analysis of weaknesses right through the effective implementation and evaluation of security measures, all the way to understanding the broader landscape of things like security audits, penetration testing, and, crucially, continuous maintenance. We'll be drawing some powerful insights from the CompTIA Security Plus Guide to Network Security Fundamentals and connecting them directly to real-world tech applications and, importantly, future career trends that are especially relevant for you listening right now.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. When we talk about network and system security, one of the very first lines of defense people usually mention is a vulnerability scan. But what is that exactly? For someone new to the field, or maybe even someone who just hears the term thrown around, what's the simplest way to think about it?
Yeah, good question. At its absolute core, a vulnerability scan is, think of it like a comprehensive digital health check. But for your entire IT infrastructure, your systems, your networks, your applications, the whole lot, it's a systematic, usually automated process. And it's designed specifically to identify and assess potential weaknesses, those little soft spots that attackers could potentially exploit.
So it's kind of like an X-ray then. You're looking for those hidden cracks before they turn into major breaks.
Precisely. That's a great analogy. It's an X-ray for your organization's digital body. It reveals those hidden cracks or soft spots before they become major incidents, major breaches. The goal is always to be proactive. You want to find these problems before the malicious actors do. You want to close those digital doors and windows before anyone even jiggles the handle.
That makes total sense. It's about proactive defense, like you said, not just reactive cleanup after something bad happens. But you used a key word earlier, continuous. That feels really important here. This isn't just a one-time checkup, is it?
Absolutely not. No way. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, vulnerability management isn't a one-time set it and forget it kind of task.
Yeah.
Not at all. Gartner, the big research firm, they define it as a continuous cyclical process. It's almost like a living organism that constantly adapts, much like your IT environment itself is always adapting, always changing.
A living organism. I like that. It paints a good picture. So how does this cycle actually work in practice? Can you walk us through the phases? Where does it all kick off?
Sure. It truly begins with baseline and discovery. You know, the old saying, you can't secure what you don't know you have. That's it. So this initial phase involves comprehensive scanning across your entire network and all our applications. The goal is to identify all your assets, every single server, every workstation, every little IoT device, and, crucially, figure out where their weaknesses lie, basically. What's on your network, what's it doing, and where are its potential flaws hiding?
Okay, so a complete inventory first, identify the weak spots. Got it. Once you know what's there and where the potential problems are, what's the next step in this loop?
Right, so from discovery, we naturally move into monitor and report. This is where your IT security management team provides regular oversight. They're continually scanning, generating detailed reports on all the findings. It's not just a one-off snapshot. Think of it as ongoing surveillance. You're watching to see what new vulnerabilities pop up and how the existing ones might be changing or evolving.
And I can only imagine those reports can be huge, potentially thousands of entries. So once you have this mountain of data, how do you even begin to make sense of it? How do you figure out what's actually the most urgent thing to fix?
That's a critical question, and it leads us directly to the next phase, prioritization. This is where the magic happens, really. You use your asset inventory, classifying what's most valuable, most critical to your business, and you combine that information with external threat intelligence. Like those CISA KV catalog updates we mentioned earlier, knowing what's actively being exploited right now, you rank vulnerabilities not just by their technical severity score, but by their true risk to the enterprise. Because, let's face it, not all vulnerabilities carry the same business impact.
That's a really crucial distinction. Okay, so you've prioritized. What happens then? Do you just jump straight into fixing everything on the high priority list?
Well, not always immediately. Sometimes you need a quicker, more immediate action, and that's the shielding phase. This involves putting in place immediate protective measures. Think updating firewall rules, deploying intrusion prevention systems, signatures, maybe virtual patching, basically blocking known threats to buy yourself some breathing room. It's like putting up a temporary barricade while you prepare the real permanent fix.
Okay, so shielding is like damage control, a temporary stopgap. What's the long-term solution then, the actual repair?
That's mitigation. This is the active work of remediation. This is where you're applying the patches, fixing the misconfigurations, addressing the root causes of the vulnerabilities. It usually follows a structured workflow. This is the heavy lifting, the actual repair work to eliminate the vulnerability.
Right, and once it's fixed, the cycle's complete. We're done. Right, move on.
Not quite. Almost there. The final phase, and it's just as important, is maintain. This phase focuses on ongoing configuration management and provisioning, making sure that both new deployments and your existing systems remain secure and compliant over time. You're constantly checking, updating, adapting because the threat landscape never sleeps. This whole continuous cycle, really, its goals are proactively identify and remediate vulnerabilities before exploitation, accurately understand and track risk over time, and importantly, make all your other security investments like your IDS, your antivirus, your firewalls even more effective. It's a truly holistic approach.
That holistic view really is key. So, okay, for those of us who might actually be tasked with running these scans, there are clearly some pretty big decisions to make up front. It's definitely not just, picking a tool, hitting scan, and walking away.
Oh, far from it. You absolutely can't just pick a tool and hit go. There are crucial decisions you need to make that will determine how effective, how useful your efforts actually are.
Let's break those down, starting with the basics. What should even be scanned? In a big organization, it feels like there's always something new popping up on the network.
That's a great starting point. It really begins with understanding your assets and, critically, their value to the organization. You need to assign a data value to the information you hold. Identify exactly where your most sensitive data resides. Is it customer data, financial data, intellectual property? Your focus must be on the critical systems, the sensitive data stores, and the high-value assets. And this isn't just about your big central servers anymore. It includes everything from core enterprise systems right down to individual workstations, and increasingly all those little IoT devices, printers, cameras, sensors that connect to your network. Every digital asset is a potential way in.
Okay, that makes sense. Focus on what matters most. So once we know what to scan, the next question is, how should it be scanned? Are there different techniques, different ways to approach it?
Absolutely. There are several key distinctions here. First, we have active versus passive scanning. Active scanning, well, it directly probes for vulnerabilities. It actively sends packets, sends requests to try and elicit responses from the target. It's direct interaction. Passive reconnaissance, on the other hand, is more about gathering information without directly interacting with the target in a way that might trigger alarms or defenses. It's more like quietly observing network traffic, looking at banners, things like that, without actually knocking on the door. Both have their place.
And what about the perspective, like looking from the inside versus the outside? That seems like a pretty important difference.
It is a huge difference. That's internal versus external scanning, and you absolutely positively need to do both. Internal scans look for weaknesses from within your network perimeter. They simulate what an insider threat, maybe a disgruntled employee could do, or what an attacker could achieve if they've already breached your initial defenses somehow. External scans, conversely, examine your internet-facing assets, your web servers, your VPN gateways from an attacker's perspective, looking for those easy entry points from the outside world.
Right.
It's like checking the security of your house from both the street outside and from inside your living room. You need both views.
Definitely. And then there's this question of access. Do you run the scan with full admin rights, or do you run it like an unprivileged user?
Right.
What's the thinking there? Credentialed versus non-credentialed.
Exactly. That's the difference between credentialed versus non-credentialed scans. Authenticated or credentialed scans are where the scanner logs into the target system using valid credentials like a username and password. This provides a much deeper, more thorough evaluation. It can see the host's configuration details, all the installed software, precisely which security patches are missing. It gives you highly accurate and detailed information. It's really powerful for uncovering misconfigurations and making sure you're meeting compliance requirements. It's almost like having a trusted auditor inside the system with a master key.
Okay, that sounds super thorough.
Yeah,
And non-credentialed, is that more like what a random attacker might try initially?
pretty much, yeah. Unauthenticated scans are performed without logging in. They rely on external data, probing open ports, looking at service banners, that sort of thing. Now, they're quicker, but they can result in more false positives, flagging things that aren't actually vulnerabilities. And they provide much less detailed information about the operating system and the software installed. This method is often what external threat actors use initially, or what security analysts use to get a quick pulse check on publicly exposed assets.
So you need both perspectives.
Ideally, yes. A truly thorough vulnerability management program includes both credentialed and non-credentialed scanning because they offer different complementary views of your security posture.
Okay, that's incredibly granular. Lots to think about there. Finally, the big timing question. When should it be scanned? Is it like a monthly chore, a weekly thing, or is it more driven by events?
Well, the short answer is kind of all of the above. Regularly scheduled scans are paramount. We're talking at least weekly or monthly assessments for most organizations. In fact, data from companies like Qualys shows that a vast majority, like 80% of their customers, run recurring scans at least monthly. And a really significant chunk, maybe 60%, run them weekly, so frequency matters. But beyond that regular cadence, you must scan after any significant system changes or updates. Deploying new software, reconfiguring a server, scan it, because new changes often introduce new unforeseen vulnerabilities. And of course, you need to scan in response to specific events or incidents. Maybe a major new threat emerges, like Log4j, or you identify a breach attempt against your network. That warrants an immediate targeted scan. It's about constant vigilance, really. Given the sheer vastness and, let's be honest, complexity of modern IT environments, that raises a really important question. What kind of vulnerabilities are we actually looking for? And what specific tools help us find them? Because the landscape of scanning, it's incredibly diverse. You really need to tailor your approach based on what part of your infrastructure you're examining and, frankly, what you're trying to achieve with the scan.
Right, so it's definitely not a case of one size fits all. You're saying there are specialized scanners, kind of like specialist doctors, for different parts of your digital kingdom.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to put it. You wouldn't use a heart specialist to fix a broken bone, right?
No, hopefully not.
Right. Similarly, you need the right tool for the right job in cybersecurity. We can generally group these specialized scans into a few logical categories. Let's start with what we might call infrastructure-focused scans. These look at your core network components and your individual systems. First up, you have host-based scans. These, as the name suggests, evaluate vulnerabilities on specific individual hosts. Think your servers, your workstations, right there within your network. They dive deep into the operating system, the installed software, the configuration settings. The big benefit here is getting really detailed visibility into each host's security posture. It helps enormously with patch management, finding missing updates, and also detecting unauthorized software or changes someone might have made.
So super granular on one machine.
Exactly. If you need thorough information on a specific machine's setup, its patches, its software inventory, this is your go-to scan. Tools like Tenable Vulnerability Management, especially with their agent-based approach, are excellent for this kind of continuous monitoring and data gathering from individual hosts. Then you have port scans. These are absolutely foundational. They work by sending network queries to different ports on a target device or maybe a whole network segment to see which ports are open, which are closed, or which are filtered by a firewall. This helps reveal potential attack vectors and identifies what services are actually accessible from the network. It's often the very first step in evaluating the security of network equipment like routers or firewalls.
Kind of like checking which doors and windows are open on the network.
Precisely. It helps you map your network infrastructure, identify misconfigurations, and, importantly, close unnecessary open ports that could be exploited. NRAP Security Scanner is the undisputed king here. It's free, open source, and incredibly powerful with various scanning techniques. Moving slightly broader, we have network vulnerability scans. These zoom out a bit to examine the wider network infrastructure itself, your routers, your switches, your firewalls, other network devices. They look for known flaws, incorrect settings, outdated firmware or software running on those devices. These scans help safeguard your network perimeter, identify critical misconfigurations like default passwords, check for weak encryption protocols, and generally support your overall network risk management and prioritization efforts.
Okay.
Tools like Microsoft Defender for endpoint, for instance, use specialized network sensors to capture and analyze traffic data specifically for detecting these kinds of network-level vulnerabilities.
Got it. So those cover the sort of underlying plumbing and the individual machines connected to it. What about the things people actually interact with every day, like websites, web apps, databases?
Excellent point. That brings us neatly to application and data-focused scans. These are critically important because this is often where the most valuable data lives or is processed. First, web application scans. These are absolutely crucial for any organization that has any kind of online presence, a website, a customer portal, an e-commerce site. They're designed to identify vulnerabilities unique to web applications themselves. Flaws in the code, the configuration, the application's functionality. We're talking about specific dangerous flaws like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, often called XSS, or maybe insecure authentication mechanisms.
Things that could let an attacker steal data or take over accounts.
Exactly. Running these scans throughout the development lifecycle as part of the DevSecOps approach is ideal because it helps you build secure applications from the ground up, rather than trying to bolt on security at the end. Tools like Invicti are great examples. They automate the process of crawling web apps and scanning them to find these specific vulnerabilities. Next, database scans. For any organization that maintains sensitive information in databases, customer records, financial data, patient information, these are really non-negotiable. They evaluate the security of the database systems themselves. They look at the setup, the access controls, the data stored within, searching for vulnerabilities like insecure permissions, weak passwords, or potential injection problems. Their main goal is to protect that sensitive data from unauthorized access and also help ensure compliance with data protection regulations. Imperva's Scuba Database Vulnerability Scanner is a handy free tool that works with major enterprise databases like Oracle and SQL Server. And taking it even further upstream, we have source code scans. These analyze an application's actual source code, the raw programming instructions looking for security flaws, common coding mistakes, and references to vulnerable third-party libraries. The real beauty of this is doing it early in the software development lifecycle, SDLC. Finding and fixing problems in the code itself is vastly cheaper and easier than fixing them after the application is deployed.
So catching flaws before they're even baked into the final product.
Precisely. If your organization develops its own software, this is a vital practice for preventing security issues from ever reaching production. Tools like SNCC are very popular here. They can scan Git repositories directly and integrate smoothly into CI/CD pipelines for continuous security checks as code is being written and built.
That covers a huge amount of ground.
Yeah.
But, everything's moving to the cloud these days. Are there specific tools just for cloud environments, or do the traditional scanners just kind of adapt?
That's a very timely question. Cloud environments, with their shared responsibility models and unique architectures, really demand their own specialized approach. This leads us to environment-specific scans. The main one here is cloud vulnerability scans. These are designed specifically to evaluate the security of your cloud deployments, whether it's infrastructure as a service, IaaS, platform as a service, PaaS, or even software as a service, SaaS installations. They look for cloud-specific issues. Misconfigurations in cloud services, like unsecured S3 buckets, overly permissive access restrictions, IAM policies, insecure APIs, and other poor security practices specific to platforms like AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud. The goal is to maintain visibility and control over your cloud assets and help you implement cloud security best practices. Tools like Wiz are prominent examples of cloud-native security platforms optimized for scanning large, complex cloud infrastructures.
That makes sense. It's a whole different ballgame in the cloud. Now, you mentioned earlier the importance of looking at security from both inside and outside the network. Are there specific scan types designed for those different perspectives?
Absolutely. These fall neatly under the category of perspective-based scans. First, you have internal scans. As the name implies, these focus on identifying vulnerabilities within an organization's internal network. They inspect your internal systems, servers, workstations, databases, looking for flaws that might be exploited by malicious insiders or, perhaps more commonly, by an external attacker after they've managed to gain an initial foothold inside your perimeter. Their purpose is to help you maintain a secure internal environment, mitigate those internal dangers, and give you visibility into your internal network security posture, which might look very different from the outside. OpenVAS is a very popular open source scanner often used for internal scanning. Then, in contrast, you have external scans. These identify vulnerabilities in your organization's internet-facing assets, anything publicly accessible from the internet. Think your public websites, your email servers, your VPN endpoints, customer portals. They detect potential entry points for external attackers trying to get in from the outside. They help you maintain a secure perimeter and are often required for meeting compliance requirements related to external security. A tool like Rapid Fire Vulnerability Scanner is designed to look for both internal and external vulnerabilities.
Okay, wow. It sounds like a lot of these scans, while specialized, might have some overlapping goals or might find similar issues from different angles. How do you pull all this information together for a complete picture? Or maybe ensure you're meeting specific compliance mandates?
That's where the final categories, strategic assessment and compliance scans, come into play. These help you consolidate findings or meet specific external requirements. First, assessment scans. Think of this as a thorough, comprehensive examination of a company's entire security posture. It cuts across systems, networks, applications, and infrastructure. The aim is to identify vulnerabilities broadly, evaluate the associated risks, and suggest holistic mitigation strategies. It gives you that comprehensive overview and helps prioritize vulnerabilities based on severity and potential business impact. Rapid7 Expose is a good example of a robust vulnerability management solution that excels at extensive assessment scanning. Then you have discovery scans. These are generally less invasive than full assessment scans. Their primary focus is purely on identifying and inventorying assets within a network environment. They map the network, identifying all the devices, systems, applications, and services that are present and active. The main benefit here is maintaining visibility and control over your ever-changing infrastructure. It helps you manage overall risk, detect unauthorized or rogue devices that might have popped up on the network, and aids in keeping your network inventory accurate. ZenMap, which is basically Nmap with a user-friendly graphical interface, is excellent for this kind of network discovery and mapping. And finally, compliance scanning. This type of scan is specifically designed to compare your organization's systems and networks against the requirements of specific regulations, industry standards, or security best practices. Think frameworks like PCI DSS for credit cards, IPA for healthcare data, or GDPR for privacy. It ensures your configurations and controls adhere to these required frameworks, identifies specific flaws that might lead to compliance violations, and provides the necessary reports for compliance audits. OpenSecTe is a notable open source platform that helps assess system security compliance against the standardized SAP protocol.
That is an incredibly comprehensive breakdown of all the different types of scans. It really, really drives home the point that you absolutely need a tailored approach depending on what you're trying to protect and what questions you're trying to answer.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've run these scans. Maybe you did a combination like an external scan followed by an internal credentialed scan. Now you're faced with the output, which, let's be honest, could be pages and pages, maybe even hundreds or thousands of lines of data. Here's where it gets really interesting and maybe potentially overwhelming for some folks. translating that raw data dump into actual actionable intelligence. You got to be able to understand what the report is actually telling you.
Exactly. That's a critical step. A vulnerability scan report isn't just a jumble of technical jargon and CVD numbers. It's a really critical document. Its whole purpose is to identify potential security risks in your systems and applications. It highlights those specific vulnerabilities that could theoretically or practically be exploited by attackers. It provides your IT teams, your security teams with incredibly valuable, frankly, indispensable information for defense.
And why is really understanding and interpreting this report so crucial? Is it just something for the tech team to worry about, or does it have broader implications for the entire business?
Oh, it's absolutely vital, and it has huge implications beyond just the IT department. Its primary importance is that it helps organizations identify those potential security risks before they get exploited. This enables proactive defense. It allows you to take concrete steps to protect yourselves against cyber attacks rather than just constantly being in reactive mode, cleaning up messes after they happen. And yes, it absolutely has broader business implications. A significant breach affects everyone: finance, legal, marketing, operations, reputation. A well-understood report helps guide resource allocation, justify security spending, and inform strategic security investments for the entire organization.
Okay, let's sort of peek inside a typical report then. What are the key components we should be looking for? Let's say we're looking at a report from a common tool, maybe like CollegeGuard.
Sure, most comprehensive reports follow a similar structure. You'll usually start with an executive summary. This is the high-level overview aimed at management or non-technical stakeholders. It highlights the total number of vulnerabilities found, maybe breaks them down by overall severity level, like critical, high, medium, low. Often includes trend analysis over time, maybe charts showing how the overall business risk has trended for critical assets or different business units over the last, say, 5 months. It's the give me the bottom line section.
Right, so leadership gets the big picture quick. But the technical teams, they need the details, right? The nitty-gritty.
Precisely. After the summary, you'll dive into the detailed list of vulnerabilities identified. This is the core of the report for the technical folks. Each vulnerability found is typically listed and categorized by severity, maybe using a numeric scale like 1 to 5, or the high, medium, low scale we mentioned, which makes prioritization much clearer. This section is where you get all the specifics. The unique CVE IDs, like SANN 2002-0849 we saw earlier potentially, detailed descriptions of what the vulnerability actually is, the potential consequences if it's successfully exploited, and, crucially, recommended solutions or remediation steps. Sometimes it's very specific, even including a direct link to a Microsoft download page for the exact patch needed.
That's incredibly helpful. So it's not just flagging the problem, but actively pointing towards the fix.
Right. And speaking of fixes, good reports also include clear remediation recommendations. These are specific, actionable steps laid out for the IT teams to take to address each identified vulnerability and effectively reduce the risk of exploitation. You might also see sections like vulnerabilities by status. These often use visual aids like pie charts showing the breakdown of vulnerabilities. How many are new since the last scan? How many are still active? How many were fixed but have reappeared, reopened? How many were successfully fixed? Maybe how many changed severity? And often you'll find a top 5 or top 10 vulnerable categories section. This highlights recurring problem areas across your environment, maybe persistent issues with web server configurations, insecure CGI scripts, underlying TCP/IP weaknesses, or common Windows vulnerabilities. This helps you spot systemic patterns.
So the analysis isn't just about reading down a list of CVEs. It's about understanding the trends, the context, and zeroing in on the most critical issues based on severity and maybe those recurring patterns.
Exactly. It means reviewing everything in detail, truly understanding those severity levels and what they mean in your context. Identifying the most critical vulnerabilities, which usually means those posing the greatest risk and being the most likely to actually be exploited. You need to use the appropriate tools and follow established best practices to make sense of it all and turn that data into real action.
Okay, that makes perfect sense on paper. But let's talk reality for a second. In a real-world scenario, organizations might get reports back with hundreds, even thousands of vulnerabilities. How do they realistically decide what to fix first? Isn't there a danger that teams might just tackle the easy, low-hanging fruit, even if those aren't the most critical vulnerabilities, just to show progress on the report numbers?
That is an excellent and very, very real point. It happens all the time. And it's precisely why we need to make a crucial distinction. This might be the aha moment for many of our listeners, the difference between a vulnerability and risk. So many people, even within IT, use these terms interchangeably, but they are fundamentally different, especially in how we should prioritize our actions. Understanding this difference is key to not chasing ghosts or fixing trivial issues while a critical risk remains unaddressed.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on us. What is this aha moment? What's the fundamental difference people need to grasp?
All right, the aha moment is this. A vulnerability is simply a weakness, a flaw. Think of it like an unlocked door or window in a building. It's an exposure point on an asset that exists due to a software bug, a weak configuration, maybe missing patch. It's a technical fact. But risk is that unlocked door on your main bank vault versus that unlocked door on an old garden shed out back. Risk considers not just the vulnerability itself, but also the value of the asset it affects and any mitigating factors or controls that might already be in place against that specific vulnerability.
Wow, okay. That's such a clear analogy. So the exact same technical flaw, the same unlocked window, can represent wildly different levels of risk depending on what room it leads into, what it's actually guarding.
Precisely. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine your vulnerability scan finds the exact same critical Windows patches missing on two different systems in your organization. Let's say both systems are technically exploitable over port 80, making them vulnerable to a specific web-based attack. Host 1 is your main corporate web server. It hosts your e-commerce platform, processes customer orders, stores sensitive customer data. Host 2 is Joe user's standard office laptop, primarily used for internal email and maybe some basic document editing. The vulnerability, the missing patch, is technically identical on both hosts, but the risk to your organization, it's significantly, drastically higher on the corporate web server, host 1. Why? Because that web server has a much higher asset value, it plays a more critical role in core business operations, and its compromise would have a far greater, potentially catastrophic impact on revenue, reputation, and compliance. The risk on Joe's laptop, while not zero, is comparatively much lower.
Right.
Understanding this distinction, vulnerability versus risk, is absolutely paramount for effective, efficient prioritization. You fix the vault door before the shed door.
Okay, that clarifies things immensely. So once we've grasped that critical distinction and we're thinking in terms of risk, how do we actually prioritize effectively? Are there specific systems or scoring methods that help with this?
Absolutely. When it comes down to prioritization strategies, we typically focus on a combination of factors. The technical severity of the vulnerability, its potential impact if exploited, linked to asset value, and its exploitability. How easy is it for an attacker to actually use this flaw? The Common Vulnerability Scoring System, or CVSS, is a widely used standard here. It provides numeric scores from 0 to 10 based on a complex formula that assesses various technical characteristics of a vulnerability. A high CVSS score, like a 9.0 or above, generally indicates a technically severe flaw. But, and this is a big but, CVSS primarily reflects the potential severity. It doesn't necessarily tell you how likely that vulnerability is to be exploited right now in the real world or how relevant it is to your specific environment.
Okay, so it's a good starting point for technical severity, but it sounds like there might be a gap. It doesn't tell the whole story about real-world urgency.
Exactly, that's the gap. And this is where the Exploit Prediction Scoring System, or EPSS, comes in. And honestly, it's been a bit of a game changer for many organizations. EPSS is a data-driven model. It looks at various factors: exploit code availability, chatter on underground forums, actual exploitation attempts observed in the wild, and it predicts the probability as a percentage that a specific vulnerability will be exploited in the wild within the next 30 days. It directly complements CVSS by focusing squarely on real-world exploitability.
So give me an example. How would CVSS and EPSS work together?
Okay, perfect example. Let's say you have a vulnerability with a super high CVSS score, maybe a 9.8 out of 10. Technically, it's critical, but maybe its EPSS score is really low, like 0.1%. That suggests that, despite its technical severity, attackers aren't actively exploiting it right now. Maybe it's hard to exploit reliably or requires specific conditions. Now, compare that to another vulnerability with a lower CVSS score, maybe a 7.5. Technically high, not critical, but what if its EPSS score is 75%? That tells you there's a very high probability attackers are actively going after this flaw right now. Which one should you fix first?
The one with the high EPSS, even though its CVSS is lower, because that's the one likely to cause immediate harm.
Exactly. EPSS helps you prioritize based on immediate threat, not just theoretical potential. And the EPSS model updates daily and is publicly accessible, offering a really dynamic, up-to-date view of real-world threats. It helps you allocate your limited remediation resources where they're most needed now.
Wow, a prediction model for actual exploitation. That is incredible. It feels like moving from just looking at the blueprint of a weapon to knowing if someone is actually loading it and aiming it at you. How does that change the game for security teams on the ground?
It's truly transformative. It allows teams to move beyond the old model of just chasing the highest CVSS scores, which can sometimes feel like boiling the ocean, to strategically focusing on the vulnerabilities that are actually being exploited or are highly likely to be exploited soon. It leads to much more efficient and effective risk reduction. So once you've used systems like CVSS and EPSS to prioritize, then you move into taking action steps, which is the remediation phase. This involves several key activities. Promptly applying security patches is the most common one, but it could also mean implementing new security controls, like web application firewalls, performing necessary system upgrades, or changing configurations. A proactive and timely approach here is absolutely vital. Vulnerabilities don't age well. And crucially, after you think you've applied your fixes, you must engage in validation of remediation. This means rescanning the affected systems specifically to corroborate that the identified vulnerabilities have indeed been properly addressed and are no longer detectable. You can't just assume a patch worked or a configuration change fixed the issue until you've verified it with another scan. Trust, but verify.
Okay, so scanning, analyzing, prioritizing based on risk, using things like EPSS, remediating, and then validating the fix. That's a solid process. But what does this all mean for staying truly ahead of the curve? We can't just be scanning and reacting to what we find, right? We need continuous, actionable intelligence to anticipate threats before they even hit our scanners.
Right.
Where do we find that kind of forward-looking intelligence, and how do we actually use it day to day to inform our scanning decisions, our prioritization efforts, and even our remediation strategies?
You've hit on another absolutely critical point. Robust, timely threat intelligence is non-negotiable for modern security. You need multiple, diverse sources feeding into your program to build a truly comprehensive risk analysis and to proactively inform your defense strategies, not just reactively.
Okay, give us some examples then. Where should our listeners, especially the students and the early career professionals tuning in, be looking to gather this kind of intelligence?
All right, let's talk about some of these critical sources of threat intelligence. It's a varied landscape. First, you have proprietary intelligence. This is information specific to your organization or that you pay for. It includes your own internal security monitoring data, insights you might glean from running bug bounty programs, where you pay ethical hackers for privately reporting vulnerabilities they find in your systems, and even carefully monitoring the dark web for mentions of your company, your executives, or specific threats targeting your industry. Then there are information sharing organizations, often called ISACs, Information Sharing and Analysis Centers. These are typically sector-specific groups. There are ISACs for healthcare, finance, energy, education, automotive, you name it. They facilitate the sharing of threat indicators, attack techniques, and mitigation strategies among member organizations within that specific industry. If you're in finance, knowing what threats other banks are seeing is incredibly valuable.
That makes sense. Industry-specific sharing. What about more public sources, especially for students or smaller organizations that might not have huge budgets for proprietary feeds or ISAC memberships?
Great question. There's a wealth of public information, too. Beyond the ISACs, open source intelligence, or OSINT, involves legally gathering information from free and publicly available sources, news articles, security blogs, social media, government reports, academic papers. You'd be surprised what valuable intelligence nuggets you can find through careful OSINT collection. And crucially, for vulnerability management specifically, we rely heavily on dedicated vulnerability databases. The National Vulnerability Database, or NVD, run by the U.S. government, NIST, is a massive repository cataloging vulnerabilities using standardized data formats like CVE. Speaking of which, the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, or CVE list, managed by the MITRE Corporation, provides those unique IDs for publicly known vulnerabilities, making it easy to cross-reference information across different tools and reports. And commercial databases like VulnDB aim to offer even faster updates on new vulnerabilities, including coverage of both public threats and some privately disclosed ones, striving for a more proactive approach.
Okay, NVD, CVE, VulnDB. That's already a lot of raw data points. How do organizations even begin to process and make sense of all these different feeds?
That's where technology helps. Threat intelligence platforms, or TIPs, are designed specifically for this. They aggregate, correlate, and analyze threat data from multiple sources, proprietary feeds, OSINT, vulnerability databases, ISACs, etc., and provide centralized dashboards and APIs for real-time threat monitoring, analysis, and integration with other security tools like SIEMs or SOAR platforms. They help turn that flood of data into actionable intelligence. And don't forget the importance of official security advisories. Keep an eye on alerts from trusted sources like US CERT, which is managed by CISA, or vendor-specific security advisory pages from major players like Palo Alto Networks, Cisco, Microsoft, their Security Response Center, or MSRC, Apple, Google, etc. These often provide timely, authoritative information on vulnerabilities affecting specific products. Lastly, tap into industry associations and community contributions. Groups like IntraGuard, a partnership between the FBI and the private sector, newsletters like the SANS Institute's News Bites, and professional organizations such as ISACA, ISA, and ISKey offer invaluable networking opportunities, training, certifications, and shared resources. The key takeaway here really is never rely on just one source. You need to triangulate information, leverage multiple feeds, public, private, community, to build a truly comprehensive risk analysis and stay ahead of the curve. Now, shifting gears slightly, but staying within that broader security picture, what's fascinating is how audits provide a different perspective. They offer a broader, often more formal lens compared to just the technical scans we've been discussing. Audits really focus on verifying adherence to established standards, policies, and regulations. They assess the overall security posture more from a governance, risk, and compliance (GRC) standpoint. So formally, an information security audit is defined as an independent review and examination of an organization's security mechanisms, its system records, its operational activities, and all the related documentation. Its core purpose isn't just finding flaws, but improving the overall security program, preventing improper system designs, and optimizing the efficiency and effectiveness of the safeguards you have in place.
Okay, so it's less about finding a specific missing patch and more about making sure the processes for patching, the policies for access control, the documentation for disaster recovery are all sound and being followed correctly.
Precisely. It's about ensuring the security program as a whole is designed effectively and operating effectively. And typically, there's a fairly structured six-step audit process that's commonly followed, especially for formal audits. Step one is the preliminary audit assessment. Before the real audit begins, the auditors assess the company's current technological maturity level. They identify minimum security requirements based on regulations or standards, like having a security policy, access controls, risk management procedures. This helps define the audit's expected time commitment, the cost, and the specific scope, what's in scope, what's out, so everyone's on the same page from the start. Step two is planning and preparation. Based on that preliminary assessment, the auditor develops a detailed plan. This involves figuring out how to gather sufficient evidence, predicting costs more accurately, assigning audit team members, and thoroughly reviewing the organization's IT structure, organization charts, job descriptions, system inventories, existing policies, budgets, even disaster recovery plans. It's a deep dive into the documentation before they even start interviewing people or looking at systems. Step three is establishing audit objectives. Here, specific, measurable goals for the audit are clearly outlined. These might include verifying personnel security responsibilities, examining change management processes, assessing backup and recovery procedures, or evaluating physical and environmental security controls around data centers. What exactly are we trying to improve with this specific audit engagement? Step four is performing the review. This is the fieldwork phase. This is where the auditors collect evidence through various methods: direct observation, watching processes happen, interviews, talking to data center personnel, system administrators, maybe even vendors, and examining documentation, like equipment utilization reports, security policies, procedure manuals, system logs. It often involves assessing physical security too. Are there bodyguards, locked server cages, proper access controls? And environmental controls, is the air conditioning adequate? Are there raised floors? Is there an uninterruptible power supply, UPS? It's the real detective work. Step five is preparing the audit report. After gathering and analyzing all the evidence, the auditors compile their findings and develop suggestions for corrective actions. These are typically communicated to key stakeholders, management, IT leadership, often in a formal closing meeting. This ensures everyone understands the findings and supports the recommended actions. It also gives the audited organization a chance to respond, ask clarifying questions, or provide additional context. And finally, step six is issuing the review report. This is the formal written output of the audit. It summarizes the findings, the recommendations, clearly states the audit's scope and objectives, and describes the methodologies used. This report might even include rankings of any identified security vulnerabilities or control weaknesses by urgency, maybe using categories like high, medium, or low risk, offering clear guidance on where to focus remediation efforts first.
That sounds like a very structured, almost formal, maybe even a bit bureaucratic process compared to a quick vulnerability scan. Who actually performs these audits? Is it always an outside company coming in, or can internal teams do this kind of work too?
That's a good question, and the answer is it varies. who performs audits. Several different types of entities can conduct them. You might have audits performed by federal or state regulators, especially in highly regulated industries like finance or healthcare. Think CISA, the Federal Office of Thrift Supervision back in the day, maybe the Department of Justice, depending on the context. Audits can also be performed by corporate internal auditors. These are employees of the company, usually part of an independent internal audit department that reports directly to the board or an audit committee. Or, and this is very common, especially for compliance audits like SOT2 or ISO 27001, they're done by external auditors. These are independent third-party firms that specialize in auditing and provide an objective assessment. Sometimes organizations might also bring in consultants to perform specific types of audits, especially if they lack the specialized skill set internally, maybe for a deep dive into cloud security or application security. And this naturally brings up the important distinction between internal versus external IT security audits. There are pros and cons to each approach. Internal audits, being conducted by an organization's own employees, offer some clear advantages. There's enhanced familiarity with the company's systems, processes, and culture. It can be more cost-effective since you're using existing personnel. And there's generally more flexibility and control over the audit scope and scheduling.
Okay, so it's good for maybe more frequent checks, leveraging internal knowledge. But what are the downsides? Could there be bias?
Exactly. That's the main drawback. There's potential for bias, or at least the perception of bias, because the auditors work for the company they're auditing. They might also have limited in-house expertise, especially when it comes to complex or emerging threats. And frankly, internal audit reports often carry lower credibility with external stakeholders like customers, partners, or regulators compared to an independent external audit. External audits, on the other hand, being performed by independent third-party service providers, like, say, a firm called Tarleton Security, hypothetically, offer that crucial, unbiased, objective perspective. They bring specialized expertise, often being more up-to-date on the latest threats and compliance requirements. And their reports carry significantly enhanced credibility externally.
Makes sense, but I imagine they're more expensive.
Generally, yes. The drawbacks include increased costs. It also requires more time and effort up front for the external auditors to gain familiarity with the organization's specific environment. And the organization potentially has less control over the assessment scope and methodology compared to an internal audit. Often, the best approach, especially for mature organizations, is a hybrid model, combining regular, maybe more frequent internal audits to leverage internal knowledge, identify gaps early, and maintain continuous monitoring, with periodic, perhaps annual external audits for that impartial validation, specialized insights, and external credibility, is often seen as optimal for achieving comprehensive security assurance. You get the benefits of both. And just to add, there are different types of audits focusing on specific areas. For example, an encryption and IT audit might evaluate your encryption policies, key management practices, and how well sensitive data is protected. A logical security audit focuses specifically on things like password complexity rules, account termination procedures when employees leave, how special privileged user accounts are managed, and the security of remote access controls. And increasingly important, as we touched on, is the behavioral audit. This specifically addresses vulnerabilities arising from the human factor employee behavior. Things like people leaving computers unlocked, writing down passwords, clicking on phishing links. An audit might involve testing employee awareness through simulated phishing campaigns, for instance. Because, again, people are often the weakest link in the security chain.
Okay, audits give that broad, governance-focused view. But now let's get into something that sounds a bit more exciting, especially for those listeners maybe considering a career in ethical hacking. Penetration testing. You mentioned it earlier, and it feels like it goes a significant step beyond just scanning for vulnerabilities. It's not just finding the lock. It sounds like it's actively trying to pick that lock, but in a controlled, ethical way. Can you elaborate on what exactly a penetration test entails?
You've got it exactly right. A penetration test, often called a pen test, is a proactive security assessment technique. Its purpose is to simulate real-world attacks to identify and then actively exploit vulnerabilities, but always in a controlled, safe, and ethical manner with explicit permission. The objective isn't just to find weaknesses, but to uncover how those weaknesses could actually be exploited by a real attacker, demonstrate the potential impact, and provide actionable recommendations for fixing them. It's about proving the risk.
So let's really nail down the key difference between a penetration test and a vulnerability scan, because people sometimes confuse them. A scan identifies potential weaknesses, maybe gives you that long list of CVEs. It's like getting a report listing all the doors and windows in your house that might be unlocked. A pen test, though, is actually going up to those doors and windows and trying the handles, right? Is that a good way to think about it?
That's a perfect analogy. A vulnerability scam is like checking your house for unlocked windows and making a list. A penetration test is like hiring someone, an ethical hacker, to actually try opening those windows, see if they can get inside, figure out how far they can move around once inside, what valuable items they could potentially access or steal, maybe even see if they can disable the alarm system, all with your permission, of course, to show you how a real burglar might do it.
Right. So it proves exploitability.
Exactly. Penetration tests actively exploit identified vulnerabilities, or sometimes find new ones the scanner missed, to determine their real potential impact and to test the effectiveness of your existing security controls. Did the intrusion detection system pick up the attack? Did the firewall block it? It answers those questions in a practical way. It proves the exploitability and the potential consequences.
And who typically does this kind of work? Is it usually internal staff playing the role of the attacker, or do companies typically hire specialized outside ethical hackers for this?
It can be both, similar to audits, but with some different considerations. When it comes to types of testers, organizations can certainly use their own internal security personnel. The advantages are similar. Familiarity with the systems potentially lower direct costs. However, internal staff might lack that crucial outsider perspective. They might know how things are supposed to work, which can unconsciously bias their testing. They also might not have the same level of specialized, cutting-edge offensive expertise as dedicated external testers. Alternatively, and very commonly, organizations hire external consultants or specialized firms. These external testers offer independent expertise, deep offensive skills honed across many different environments, and a truly unbiased assessment. They bring that fresh eyes perspective.
But they cost more, presumably.
Yes, they typically come with higher costs, and it's absolutely critical to have very clear scope definitions and rules of engagement established beforehand. For example, Microsoft publishes detailed cloud penetration testing rules of engagement that testers must adhere to when testing Azure services. You need clear boundaries.
I understand that before pen testers even start trying to break in, they do reconnaissance, intelligence gathering. What are the different levels or types of that? And why is it so important for the test?
Reconnaissance, or recon, is absolutely critical. It's the planning phase of the attack. There are different levels. You have external reconnaissance, gathering information from completely outside the organization's perimeter. Think analyzing public websites, DNS records, social media, job postings, anything an external attacker could see without touching the target's network directly. Then there's internal reconnaissance, gathering information once the tester has gained some initial foothold inside the network, perhaps simulating a compromised user account or device. This involves mapping the internal network, identifying valuable servers, finding user credentials, etc. And sometimes you have targeted reconnaissance, where the focus is on gathering information about specific high-value systems or data stores identified in the test objectives. This whole recon process helps the testers understand the target environment, identify potential weaknesses, and plan their specific attack strategies, much like a military general studying a battlefield before launching an operation.
And I've definitely heard terms like white box, gray box, and black box testing thrown around in the context of pen tests. What do those actually mean? How do they relate to the information the tester has?
Yeah, those terms define the level of information and access that's provided to the penetration testing team before they start the test. They essentially simulate different attacker scenarios based on knowledge. So, in a known environment test, often called a white box test, the testers are given full knowledge of the target environment. This might include network diagrams, source code for applications, administrator credentials. This simulates a scenario like a malicious insider, maybe a disgruntled sysadmin, or aims to perform the most thorough test possible by removing the time spent on initial discovery. Then you have a partially known environment test, or a gray box test. Here, the testers have limited knowledge, maybe some basic user credentials, perhaps network diagrams, but no source code. This often simulates the perspective of a standard user or maybe an attacker who has gained some initial limited access. It's a very common and practical approach. Finally, there's the unknown environment test, the classic black box test. In this scenario, the testers are given absolutely no prior knowledge or special privileges beyond maybe the target organization's name or IP address range. They have to discover everything from scratch, exactly like a real external attacker would. This provides the most realistic simulation of an attack from an unprivileged outsider's perspective, but it can also be the most time-consuming. So we've talked about scanning, auditing, and pen testing. This naturally leads to a really important question for developing practical defense strategies. How do organizations truly test their resilience against a determined, thinking adversary? And maybe just as importantly, how do they train their own defense teams under realistic pressure? This is precisely where the concept of red team versus blue team exercises comes into play. Think of it as the ultimate cyber war game, designed to pit attackers against defenders in a structured way.
A cyber war game that definitely sounds intense. Let's break down these teams. Who exactly is the red team in this scenario? What's their role?
Okay, the red team is composed of highly skilled offensive security experts. Essentially, they are ethical hackers whose job is to emulate the tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs, of real-world adversaries. They try to attack the organization's cybersecurity defenses using the same kind of tradecraft that sophisticated attackers would use. Their mindset is crucial. They assume the role and perspective of a specific type of adversary, maybe a nation-state actor, maybe a cybercriminal group, and they attempt to identify and exploit weaknesses from that perspective. Their methods often involve a multi-stage approach, gaining initial access perhaps through credential theft, exploiting vulnerability or sophisticated social engineering, then elevating their privileges, moving laterally across different systems within the network, establishing persistence, and ultimately achieving their objective, which might be exfiltrating sensitive data, all while actively trying to avoid detection by the defenders.
So they're not just running automated tools. They're thinking, adapting, and trying to stay hidden, just like a real advanced attacker.
Exactly. The ultimate goal of a red team engagement is to systematically and rigorously, but always ethically and within agreed-upon rules, identify realistic attack paths that could breach an organization's security defenses. Their skills typically include a very deep awareness of computer systems, network protocols, common vulnerabilities. They often have strong software development skills to create custom attack tools when needed. They need extensive penetration testing experience and often sophisticated social engineering capabilities. Many red teams align their activities with frameworks like the Oninar ATT&CK framework to ensure they're simulating realistic adversary behaviors.
Okay, that's the offense. Now, what about the blue team? Who are they, and what's their mission in this cyber war game?
Right, so on the other side of the exercise, you have the blue team. This team typically consists of the organization's internal incident responders, security operations center, SOC analysts, and other IT security professionals. Their job is to defend against and respond to the red team's simulated attack. Their role is really equal parts prevention, detection, and remediation. During the exercise, their focus is on identifying the intrusion, assessing its scope and impact, containing the threat, eradicating the adversary's presence, and recovering systems. They also play a key role after the exercise in providing guidance on how to improve defenses based on what the red team was able to achieve. Their ultimate goal is to neutralize risks and threats and demonstrate their ability to stop sophisticated cyber attacks, or at least detect and respond to them effectively.
So if the red team is the stealthy intruder trying to sneak in and accomplish a mission, the blue team is the security force actively hunting them down, monitoring the alarms, and try to kick them out before they succeed.
Precisely. That's a great way to visualize it. Examples of blue team activities during an exercise might include performing deep DNS analysis to spot malicious command and control traffic, conducting digital forensics and incident response (DFIR) on potentially compromised systems, actively monitoring security logs and alerts from tools like SIMS and EDR, endpoint detection and response, reviewing and tuning security tool configurations like firewall rules or antivirus policies, ensuring proper network segmentation and perimeter security, employing principles like least privilege access to limit the attacker's potential movement, and leveraging techniques like microsegmentation to further isolate critical systems.
This whole red team, blue team concept sounds like an incredibly effective, albeit potentially stressful, way to really stress test your defenses and your response capabilities. What are the main benefits organizations get from running these kinds of exercises?
The benefits are substantial, and they go far beyond just finding technical vulnerabilities. They help organizations identify points of vulnerability not just in technology, but also in people, like susceptibility to phishing, and processes, like slow incident response. Determine specific areas for improvement in their defensive incident response processes across the entire cyber kill chain, from preventing initial access to detecting data exfiltration. Build invaluable first-hand experience for the blue team in detecting, analyzing, and containing sophisticated targeted attacks under realistic pressure. Develop and refine response and remediation playbooks to restore normal operations more quickly and effectively after an incident.
So it's not just about finding the flaws, but actually practicing and improving the human response element too.
Absolutely, that's a huge part of it. These exercises also help identify misconfigurations and critical coverage gaps in existing security products. Maybe the EDR tool wasn't deployed on a key server, or the SIEM rules weren't triggering on certain types of activity. Ultimately, strengthen overall network security and, importantly, improve that critical metric called breakout time, which is the window an attacker has between initially compromising a system and being able to move laterally to other systems. The security firm CrowdStrike, for instance, famously advocates for a 1-10-60 rule. Detect an intrusion in under 1 minute, investigate and understand it in under 10 minutes, and contain or eject the adversary in under 60 minutes. Red Team exercises directly test and help improve this capability. And finally, they significantly elevate security awareness among all staff, particularly regarding human vulnerabilities like social engineering, when they see firsthand how easily these can be exploited.
That's powerful stuff. Now, sometimes I hear people talk about a purple team. What's that about? It's like a mix of the two or something different.
Yeah, the purple team concept isn't usually a separate team, but rather a collaborative approach. It describes situations where the red and blue teams work closely together, perhaps even during the exercise itself, sharing information and insights in real time to maximize the learning and improvement for the organization. For example, the red team might explain a technique they used, and the blue team might share the specific alert or log data that helped them detect it. This immediate feedback loop can be incredibly valuable. CrowdStrike, for instance, views this close collaboration and, crucially, a thorough post-exercise debriefing involving all stakeholders with detailed reporting as essential components of effective red-blue exercises. The goal is shared learning and continuous improvement, making the whole security posture stronger, hence purple, the mix of red and blue.
Okay, this has been fantastic, getting into the weeds of scanning, auditing, pen testing, and even these team exercises. Let's bring it back now to the practical, real-world application. For our listeners, especially the students, what are the day-to-day things, the foundational controls, the essential tools, and the overarching best practices that really keep organizations secure on an ongoing basis?
Absolutely. It's crucial to ground this in the fundamentals. It really starts with having the right network security tools and controls in place. Firewalls are the absolute baseline, the cornerstone of network security. They sit between your private internal network and external networks like the internet, acting as a gatekeeper, authenticating traffic, monitoring connections, logging activity, and reporting potential issues. There are different types like network layer firewalls, packet filters, and more sophisticated application-level gateways. Proxy servers also play a vital role, often working alongside firewalls. They can hide the internal IP addresses of client workstations, making them harder to target directly, and they can act as choke points for enforcing authentication and filtering web traffic based on content policies. Encryption is non-negotiable for sensitive data. This means converting plain text into unreadable ciphertext to secure data, both when it's traveling across the network in transit and when it's stored on disks or databases at rest. But, and this is critical, encryption is only as strong as the management of the encryption keys. You need robust processes, often involving dual control, requiring two people to access keys, and secure storage for those keys. Lose the key, lose the data. Logical security and access controls are the software-based safeguards. This includes things like unique user IDs for everyone, strong password policies requiring complexity, regular mandatory changes, and absolute no sharing, robust authentication mechanisms, maybe using multi-factor authentication with security tokens or biometrics, and ensuring access rights are granted based on the principle of least privilege, only giving people the minimum access they need to perform their job functions. Antivirus software, or more broadly, anti-malware or endpoint protection platforms like McAfee, Symantec, CrowdStrike, Sentinel, etc., are essential for detecting and disposing of malicious content like viruses, worms, ransomware. But they are only effective if they are kept constantly updated with the latest threat signatures and behavioral detection engines. Live updates are crucial. Intrusion detection systems, IDS, or intrusion prevention systems, IPS, actively monitor network traffic or host systems for suspicious activity or known attack patterns, alerting administrators or even automatically blocking malicious traffic, and often overlooked but vital for investigation and auditing. Robust log management. Collecting, correlating, and securely storing logs from all these systems is crucial for understanding what happened during an incident and for meeting compliance requirements.
Okay, that covers the network and the basic system protections really well. What about the applications themselves? The software where a lot of the business logic actually lives and where users directly interact. Are there specific security considerations there?
Absolutely. Application security is a huge field in itself, but it generally focuses on ensuring security across three main functional areas of an application's lifecycle. First, programming security. This involves securing the development environment itself, things like ensuring physical security and strong password protection for development servers. It also means having proper security access controls for making changes to code, source code management, and stringent documented authorization procedures for moving code from development environments through testing and into the production environment where users access it. You absolutely don't want developers pushing code straight to production without oversight and testing. Second, processing security. This focuses on implementing controls and monitoring within the application's workflow to prevent issues like falsified or erroneous data being input, incomplete transaction processing, accidental duplicate transactions, or untimely processing that could cause errors or allow fraud. This might involve input validation checks, transaction logging, reconciliations, or requiring specific approvals for unusual or high-value transactions. Third, access security within the application. This involves maintaining security against unauthorized access, both from internal users, for example, through regular password changes enforced by the application, tracking who accesses data and when, role-based access controls within the app, and from remote users connecting over the network, for example, ensuring connections are encrypted, maybe requiring MFA for application login, using firewalls to protect the application servers.
That programming point brings up something critical I've heard mentioned often, especially in finance and regulated industries. Segregation of duties, or SOD. How does that fit into this picture, particularly with application security?
SOD is a fundamental internal control concept designed primarily to minimize the risk of fraud or significant error, especially involving financial transactions or sensitive data modifications. It involves carefully designing roles and responsibilities and reviewing individuals' access authorizations within systems to ensure that no single person has the ability to complete an entire critical process from beginning to end, especially one that could be exploited for fraudulent purposes. A classic example is that the person who can request a payment shouldn't also be the person who can approve that payment and then also execute the payment transfer. Or, in the development context we just discussed, a developer who writes code shouldn't also be the person solely responsible for testing it and deploying it to the production environment. You need checks and balances involving different people.
So it breaks up powerful processes.
Exactly. It prevents one person from having too much control or the ability to commit fraud and then cover it up. For complex enterprise systems like SAP or Oracle Financials, specialized tools are often needed just to analyze user access permissions and identify potential SOD conflicts because the roles and authorizations can get incredibly complex. It's about preventing any single individual from having the keys to the kingdom without oversight.
And you mentioned earlier, multiple times actually, that people can often be the weakest link. We talked about behavioral audits. How do we address that human element in terms of day-to-day controls and best practices?
That's where ongoing awareness and specific controls targeting behavior come in, sometimes discussed under the umbrella of behavioral audits or security awareness training. These directly address the vulnerabilities that arise purely from employee behavior, things we all see, like people leaving their computers unlocked when they walk away, writing down complex passwords because they can't remember them, oversharing information, or the big one, falling for phishing attacks or social engineering scams. Preventative measures are crucial here. This includes regular, mandatory, and engaging security awareness training. Things like interactive phishing simulation exercises where employees receive fake phishing emails to see if they click not to punish them, but to educate them in a safe environment. Holding webinars or workshops on current threats. Clear policies on data handling and password security. You have to continuously train and reinforce that human firewall.
There are so many different controls and practices to consider. It can feel a bit overwhelming. Could you maybe give us a summary, perhaps distilling some of the most impactful overall best practices specifically for vulnerability management, maybe drawn from a leader in that space like Qualys that you mentioned earlier?
Certainly. Pulling it all together, Qualys, based on their extensive experience, outlines 5 key vulnerability management best practices that are really practical and impactful. 1. Know your network, asset discovery. This is foundational. You absolutely must map your network and discover all hosts and assets connected to it. Unknown, unmanaged, or shadow IT devices, think rogue wireless access points, contractor laptops plugged into the network, maybe even smart TVs in conference rooms introduce significant unmanaged risk. You need to deploy your vulnerability scanner strategically to get visibility across your internet perimeter, your DMZs, and your internal networks. Again, you simply can't protect what you don't know exists. 2. Automate assess consistently and often. Vulnerability management should be a proactive, automated process, not a reactive manual chore. Scan consistently and regularly, weekly or monthly is common. Ensure consistency in what is scanned, covering the same core assets plus detecting new ones. The same ports and services are checked each time. The scans run at the same speed to avoid overwhelming systems or getting inaccurate results. And ideally, scans run from the same vantage point or perspective for comparable results. Crucially, embed vulnerabilities scanning into your existing IT processes, scan new devices as they're built, scan systems after monthly patching cycles, scan systems before and after significant changes are made through your change management process. Make it part of the routine. 3. Integrate your VM solution. Vulnerability data becomes exponentially more powerful when it's integrated with your other security and IT operational tools. For example, enhance your intrusion detection system, IDS, or SIEM, by feeding it vulnerability data. This can help prioritize alerts. An attack against a known vulnerable system is much more concerning, and eliminate false positives. An alert for an attack against a vulnerability, doesn't exist on the target system. Integrate VM findings with your change management or trouble ticketing system to create automated workflows for assigning remediation tasks. You could even potentially further automate patch deployment or configuration management based on scan results, or enable network access control (NAC) systems to automatically quarantine devices that are found to be critically vulnerable. Your security tools should work together as an ecosystem. 4. Distribute use, democratize the data. Vulnerability management tasks and the data they generate shouldn't be siloed solely within the security team. Use role-based access controls, least privileges, within your VM platform to assign specific rights and views to other relevant teams. Internal audit needs visibility for compliance systems, and network administrators need data to fix the issues on their systems. Desktop management teams need info on workstation vulnerabilities. Maybe even application owners need reports on their specific apps. Vulnerabilities need to be assessed and addressed from multiple perspectives: internal, DMZ, external, maybe even from third-party or partner connections. Get the data to the people who can act on it. 5. Report on vulnerabilities and de-risk. And this circles back to our earlier crucial distinction. Critically, your reporting must distinguish between raw vulnerabilities and actual business risk. Reports, especially those going to management, should focus on risk, taking into account asset value, mitigating controls, and real-world exploitability, like EPS scores, not just presenting overwhelming lists of raw vulnerability counts or high CVSS scores. This ensures that business leaders understand the potential impact and can make informed decisions about resource allocation, not just get lost in the technical details.
That is a truly robust and practical set of best practices. It covers everything from the foundational discovery piece right through to integrating tools and reporting effectively based on risk.
Fantastic. Now, let's pivot for the final section. For our students listening, for the early career professionals, how does all this theory, all these tools, all these practices we've discussed, how does it actually translate into a real thriving career? Especially thinking about our local listeners in a dynamic, growing tech market like the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
This is where it all comes together, right? Connecting the knowledge to the opportunity. And let me tell you, DFW is not just any city. It is absolutely a booming technology hub. It's consistently outperforming national averages in tech job growth. It's a genuine economic powerhouse. Home to, I think the latest count is 24 Fortune 500 company headquarters, massive names like AT&T, Texas Instruments, Southwest Airlines, American Airlines. And it boasts the sixth largest tech workforce in the entire U.S., with well over 329,000 tech professionals working in the region. Wow, sixth largest in the U.S. That's incredible growth. So what does that mean in terms of actual job prospects for someone getting into cybersecurity here?
The job growth numbers are phenomenal. Some reports projected over 20,000 new tech jobs being added in the DFW area in 2025 alone, and the financial incentives are significant too. The median tech wage in DFW is reported to be around $89,833. Now compare that's a staggering 123% higher than the median wage across all jobs in the state of Texas. And the demand specifically for cybersecurity skills here is really driven by several key strong industries. Financial services is huge, with major corporate campuses and operation centers for companies like Wells Fargo, Capital One, JP Morgan Chase, Charles Schwab, Fidelity Investments, all needing robust security. Healthcare is another major driver, with large systems like Baylor Scott and White Health investing heavily in protecting sensitive patient data. And don't forget, defense and aerospace, with the long-standing significant presence of major contractors like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon requiring high levels of security clearance and expertise. This industry diversity means you're not pigeonholed. There are cybersecurity opportunities across many different sectors right here in DFW.
Okay, so the market is definitely hot.
Now, for our Dr. Sampak College of Business graduates specifically, how does their curriculum, particularly what they learn in a course like BCIS 4345, covering this vulnerability management module, how does that align directly with what these DFW employers are actually looking for? What kind of job titles should they realistically be aiming for as they start their careers?
That's the beauty of it. The alignment is incredibly strong. The curriculum at Tarleton State University's Dr. Sampak College of Business, especially in programs related to MIS and CIS, is designed with these market needs in mind. The practical skills you learn in this vulnerability management module, things like understanding different scan types, knowing how to interpret reports, understanding prioritization based on risk, knowing about audits and penetration testing concepts, leveraging threat intelligence. These directly mirror the responsibilities listed in actual DFW job postings for security roles. For example, some common and in-demand entry-level or early career job titles include security analyst or information security analyst. This is often a great starting point, focusing on threat detection, using tools like SIMs, participating in incident response, performing network security analysis, and often being involved in the vulnerability management lifecycle we've discussed. Starting salaries for these roles in DFW, even entry level, can often be well above $100,000, reflecting the high demand. You might also see more specialized roles like vulnerability management analyst. These positions are specifically dedicated to identifying, assessing, prioritizing, and coordinating the mitigation of vulnerabilities, often using industry standard scanning tools like Nessus, Qualys, or Nexpose Daily.
And what about for those students who get really interested in the offensive side, the ethical hacking, the red teaming aspects you mentioned?
Absolutely, there are pathways there too. Roles like penetration tester or ethical hacker focus squarely on offensive security, simulating attacks to find weaknesses. These roles often require deeper technical skills and proficiency with specialized tools like those found in Kali Linux. Junior pen tester roles in DFW might start around the $50,000, $60,000 range, but senior experienced pen testers can command salaries well into the $110,000 to $179,000 range, or even higher. And let's not forget roles that blend technical knowledge with a business context, perfect for graduates from a college of business. Titles like IT auditor or GRC analyst, governance, risk, and compliance analyst are in high demand. These roles apply technical security knowledge within the context of business processes, focusing on ensuring compliance with frameworks like NIST, ISO 2701, PCI DSS, SOX, etc., conducting risk assessments, and performing audits. Junior IT auditor roles in DFW might range from $65,000 to $100,000, while lead GRC or audit roles can easily reach $116,700 to $196,100 or more. And it's worth noting the role of the IT auditor itself is evolving. Modern IT auditors need not just knowledge of governance frameworks, but also significant technical proficiency. They need to understand cloud security, data analytics, use a data-first audit approach, and be comfortable with technology audit tools. Graduates from a business-focused college like Dr. Sam Pack, who also have strong technical cybersecurity skills learned in courses like this, are uniquely positioned for these increasingly important hybrid roles.
That's a fantastic overview of the career landscape and the direct relevance of this coursework. It sounds incredibly promising. But let's be realistic. Academic knowledge is one thing, but employers always want practical skills and experience. What concrete strategic steps can our listeners, especially students, take right now to bridge any potential skills gap and really make themselves stand out in this competitive DFW job market?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? While your academic foundation from Tarleton is strong, employers absolutely demand demonstrable hands-on experience and often look for professional credentials as validation. So here's a practical strategic roadmap to bridge that gap. First, focus on a certification pathway. Certifications are often used by HR departments to filter resumes and provide a baseline validation of skills. The CompTIA Security Plus certification is really the ideal foundational cert. It's globally recognized, vendor neutral, and even approved by the U.S. Department of Defense, DoD 8570 baseline. It validates the essential baseline security skills needed for core security functions and aligns directly with many objectives in your BCIS 4345 curriculum: security concepts, threat mitigation, security architecture, operations. Holding a Security Plus makes you immediately more competitive for those security analyst, systems administrator, or junior IT auditor roles we discussed. The cost is around $425, which is a significant investment, but often has a very high ROI early in your career. As a strategic next step, particularly if you're drawn to penetration testing or offensive security, consider the Certified Ethical Hacker, CEH, from EC Council. It demonstrates that you have the knowledge and skills to look for vulnerabilities and weaknesses using the same tools and techniques as malicious hackers, but ethically. It definitely helps differentiate candidates for penetration tester or cyber incident analyst roles. The cost is higher, typically around $950 to $1,199 for the exam voucher, plus training costs if you go that route. Second, and arguably even more important than certs, is prioritizing hands-on experience initiatives. You need to get your hands dirty. Your curriculum itself, as you noted, advocates for hands-on vulnerability scanning exercises using popular tools like Nessus and Kali Linux. Take full advantage of any live labs and virtual environments provided through your coursework or that you can access independently. Platforms like TryHackMe, HackTheBox, or even setting up your own virtual lab allow you to practice scanning, exploiting, and defending in a safe, controlled setting. This is where theory meets practice. Actively participate and capture the flag CTF competitions. These are incredibly powerful, gamified ways to apply your skills in realistic scenarios, work in teams, and learn new techniques under pressure. DFW actually has a vibrant cybersecurity community with local universities often hosting or excelling in regional and national CTF events. Participation provides unparalleled practical experience and fantastic networking opportunities. Put CTF participation on your resume, and, of course, pursue internships. There is simply no substitute for real-world experience working within a company security team. Many DFW companies, including those financial giants like Wells Fargo or Fidelity, defense contractors, and major tech firms, offer cybersecurity internships. Start looking early and apply broadly. Third, don't underestimate the power of professional development and networking. Engage with local meetups and clubs. Search on platforms like meetup.com for groups like the Dallas Cybersecurity Group. Get involved with university cybersecurity clubs, whether at Tarleton or neighboring institutions like UT Dallas, University of Dallas, or UNT. These offer fantastic opportunities to learn from experienced professionals, hear about local job openings, and build valuable connections. Attend conferences and workshops when possible, even virtually. Major conferences like the RSA conference, even attending specific sessions online, provide insights into the latest trends, like AI-powered security, identity protection strategies, or advanced red teaming techniques. They also offer invaluable networking opportunities. Smaller, local conferences like BCIS Dallas-Fort Worth are also excellent and often more affordable. Taking these proactive steps, getting certified, building hands-on skills, and networking actively is absolutely key to owning your career growth and embracing the lifelong learning required in this dynamic field.
So we started this whole deep dive thinking about those master keys to your digital kingdom, maybe left lying around accidentally. And over this discussion, we've really unpacked how things like continuous vulnerability management, rigorous audits, and those intense simulated attacks like red team exercises, how these are all part of your ongoing multi-layered defense strategy. We've seen that really understanding these potential keys, these vulnerabilities, and knowing how to protect them, it isn't just about preventing breaches, preventing disaster. It's also about building an incredibly valuable, highly in-demand career, especially in a booming tech hub like the DFW Metroplex. From the nitty-gritty details of, say, host-based scans versus web app scans, right through to the strategic importance of getting certifications like CompTIA Security Plus for landing that first great job at companies like AT&T or Wells Fargo right here. We've really covered how you need to approach network and system security as a truly continuous, dynamic, and ever-evolving process. We genuinely hope this deep dive has armed you with some critical insights, practical tips, and maybe some inspiration for your BCIS 4345 journey and whatever comes next in your career. If you enjoyed this, if you found it valuable, please do us a favor. Like, subscribe, and maybe share it with someone else who could benefit. Your engagement really does help us bring more valuable content like this your way. And don't forget to check out the description below. We've put links there to additional resources, including more details on the certifications, the tools, and those DFW career opportunities we talked about today. So as you reflect on everything we've covered today, from CVEs to CVSS to EPSS to red teams, consider this final question. In a world where new vulnerabilities are constantly emerging, literally every day, and where adversaries are always adapting and becoming more sophisticated, how will you proactively adapt your skills and your strategies to secure not just the systems you might be responsible for, but also your own professional future in this exciting field? For the deep dive, I'm your host.
And I'm your expert. Stay connected, stay secure.
Until next time, keep your network strong, your data protected, and your curiosity alive.